Udri, udri,
Ljubo Granata, released sometime in 1993, is the first patriotic album from Ljubiša Kalas. It was originally released by Master Music Productions and later released by RTVJ for Swiss distribution. You may have noticed that I called this Ljubo Granata instead of Udri brate Nejali Granate. This is because of the way how the J card and cassette tapes show the title. Notice on both of these releases, they don't use Udri brate like how Živelo Pravoslavia's real name was Srpske patriotske pesme. Unlike Srpske patriotske pesme, however, we can't be 100% sure since the German and Swiss tapes sometimes don't list the album name. Currently, the only versions we have pictures of is the Swiss and German releases. So if you have a Yugoslavian tape, you know where to go. Speaking of different distributors, unlike episode 2, both Swiss and Yugoslavian and German distributions share the same covers, with the only difference being the company logo. But like the Swiss distribution of Srbima Zasva Vremena, there is a difference between the RTVJ and master release. Like the Bujak Shop release, there is a song that ends early. Though, unlike a fade-out on the vocals, RTVJ did the biggest brain move ever and placed the fade-out during the song. Specifically after the first reprisal of the chorus in the song Kara George Diko. I'm pretty sure someone got fired for that. Please note that there is a possibility that there is an RTVJ batch without the error, but we've yet to find it. So beware if you come across an RTVJ copy online. Remember last episode when I mentioned a lot of sorts? Well, this was one of the tapes that I got in the lot. Why mention this? Well, the orchestra this time around is Miki Mitrovic. When looking at the database, this seems to be the only patriotic album Miki has ever worked on, in terms of arrangement. I could be wrong, however. The lyricist in this tape is Rade Vidic. If that name sounds familiar, he was the same music artist and lyricist responsible for Kara George Diko. No, not this one. This one by Vojo Tintor, that predated this album by 2 years. Interestingly, this isn't the only collaboration with Kalas and Vidic. From what I gather, their collaboration dates all the way back to 1989 from this compilation tape, and it wouldn't be the last. Other than the photographer, that's all notable staff. With that said, we can go move on to my tape showcase. If you or a loved one have a copy of this album online that looks different than my tape or any on the database, go to www.discogs.com. That's www.discogs.com and upload your version to the database today. Making an account is free, and to make things easier, you can click here for a head start. Just make sure you note your difference in this little box right here. Helps with organization, and while the mods don't check over in our TurboFolk area that often, it will give you a better chance to prevent needs changes. Good luck, fellow future archivists, and remember, archive, archive, archive. This is my tape. The J card is a little dented in the back, but otherwise in great shape. It's printed slightly sideways, and unlike some reissues I have, the colors are consistent with their first edition counterparts. You may have noticed that I have the RTVJ version. Well, allegedly, the same seller had another copy. That was a master German release, though at the time of purchase, unfortunately I did not see it. You may have noticed in last episode's preview that the audio quality was... yeah, not so great. Well, at the behest of Omega, I chucked the tape into a silica chamber and let it marinate with the other tapes that also had similar issues. Oh, and I guess I should take some time to mention that I have a brand new tape player and it is wonderful to use. So, after a week, I decided to replay the album and... well, now side B plays clear and side A is still shit. Unfortunately, it needs a little bit more time to marinate in the chamber. In the original script, I did say that side B sounds clearer and improved, and side A being shit. Unfortunately, when replaying it again to re-record a specific song, no luck. Everything's back to being boo-boo. It needs just a little bit more time to marinate in the silica chamber. That's all I have to say about my tape. We can now get on to the nitty-gritty of the tape. I'm not sure what words I'm looking for, but the instrumentation of the tape sounds... serpentine? Yeah, you heard me right. Sounds like a serpent moving. While some songs are their own thing, others sound similar in the way that it builds off the instrumentation of the first. It should be noted that this album emphasizes accordion, with MIDI being used as a supplement. And, well, what can I say? I'm in love with this album, just from the instrumentation alone. But that's not all. Ljubiša supplements this with his deeply rich vocals that serenade your eardrums. I think the only song that's the exception to this is Vojo Vojo Vojislave, where it sounds like a cartoony villain theme you'd hear in an RPG from the 90s. Speaking of which, the contents of the tape. It's kind of hard to explain, but there's no threats of ethnic cleansing or derogatory language. What does this have to do with Vojo Vojo Vojislave, you may ask? Well, the song is about Vojislav...
Republika Radovan Kardazikikivik. It's no wonder the Bosnian War ended in a stalemate.
Nah, I'm just fucking with you. Fuck that video. Vojislav Šešelj, who was one of the founders of the Serbian Radical Party. The way the song was orchestrated just makes me think that they were like, be very afraid, guys. He's a force to be reckoned with. Ooh. But listening to the song now, with its dated MIDI, makes this fall flat on its face. Don't get me wrong, it's a great song, but at least here, from an American perspective, it's kinda goofy. Can't say the same for Udri brate ne žali granate. On the surface, it's a very catchy song with the chorus repeating over and over again, with the main gist of the song being to spare no expense and keep shelling the enemy. At worst, it's just that obnoxious song that you would skip. Unfortunately, when using the radio, you can't really do that. Allegedly, the song was spammed a lot, and it mentally wore down those who were caught in the shortwave crossfire. How dark. You may have noticed that there's a song named Zorane Zorane. This isn't about the Zoran Rocky Volevich talked about. Actually, it's about a soldier named Zoran Borovnin, who tragically lost his life a year prior to the release of the album. One of the verses even goes into specific details on how he ultimately fell. As for the rest of the album, it's your standard war tape affair, and something that I find interesting is that in Kara George Diko, you can hear the accordion buttons being pressed. It's probably not a unique thing to come across, but throughout my tape collecting journey, it seems to be the only tape that does so. I suppose as channel tradition, there's supposed to be some sort of theory segment. Initially, I was thinking of the reason why the album looked the way it is, such as Udri brate being used as an advertising scheme, and of course, the smug look on Ljubiša saying, "You know who sent you." I honestly think that's a little insensitive, especially considering what happened to Ljubiša. So, I raise a question. Who was the original distributor of Ljubo Granata? You see, Master has had a track record of buying the rights of albums and selling it under their label. If you're familiar with Prvelinia, not that one, this one, you'll know that the original distributors were Tomiton. Sometime after the album's released, it was acquired by Master. The same happened with Nedam Krajine, the Bora Drlecha one, not the Kininja one. They've also sold a Gordan Krajičnik album, and while it is plausible that it is their own release, it's bizarre that Baja I Goki Band, a group that is exclusive to Superton, released an album from a completely different company. While there isn't solid evidence, I have a feeling that Jugo Hit was responsible for this album. There is an S. Lorbek for mastering credits. He's also listed on Srpske patriotske pesme for the same reason. He was also on another Jugo Hit release, though he was a lyricist. Speaking of lyricists, he and Rade Vidic worked at the same company at some point, PGP, RTB, or RTS. The album came out in 1993, and, well, Jugo Hit's catalog just so happened to be spotty at best from that year. So we could assume that Ljubo Granata would be one of them. It's also a bit of a stretch, but both of these patriotic tapes feature similar font colors, black, red, and yellow, and of course, the white background. Again, that is probably one of the weaker points of this theory, and I'm sure is debunked easily. But who knows, maybe Master did get it, or it could also be that Jugo Hit was initially the distributor, but last minute some deal broke out between Jugo Hit and Master, and thus that's how we have this tape in particular. Who knows? That's it for this tape. I think overall it's a great album, all things considered. One of my favorite songs of this album has to be Nemo Otsa Nema Maike. It's absolutely heart-wrenching, especially in the instrumentals. And I'm sure if you understand the lyrics, it's even more devastating. If you could track down this album, try to track down the master version. If you don't mind Kara George Diko being cut off prematurely, then go for the RTVJ version. I hope you enjoyed the album, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Tune in next time for Nejo Samanyache, Oj Manyacho I Dosta Namje Jevene I Tracha.